Trying to record. Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I just lost you.
Right.
Oh, there you go.
Right.
Okay.
Here we go. So it's recording now. Right. Hi everyone. Lee Ashby here from Motocross Memories Worldwide. As most of you know, I'm doing some special Speedway interviews as well, and I've got an amazing interview for you tonight. I've got none other than two-time world champion and American star, Mr. Bruce Penhall. How's it going, Bruce?
It's going goodly. I don't know about star, or maybe a has been. That's probably better.
All right. Sorry, megastar. You were
A
truly a
has
megastar.
been.
Us British, especially us British, we thought the world of you. That's for sure.
Yeah, I had some great times in Britain. I love England. I had, at Cradley was, my home team, and, they took me under their wing every year that I was there. I couldn't have asked for a better home club. That's for sure. I loved it.
Yeah. I did say to my mum I would give her a little shout on the video. So her name's Jenny, and she obviously said that she got your autograph at Wembley that time when you won the world title. So if you can give her a little wave or something.
Okay, so Jenny, here you go. Here's a big kiss. Mwah.
Oh my God, she's gonna love that.
That wasn't a wet kiss either, okay? It was just a
No.
kiss.
Brilliant. Right. So first question then, Bruce. How did you get into Speedway, and what was your earliest memory of the sport?
I got into Speedway, oh boy, this is going to age me, back in about 1970.
Okay.
And my father sponsored a really well-known Speedway rider here in the United States called Rick Woods. And really, he was an true American Speedway idol at that time. So when my dad sponsored Rick, it wasn't only my dad, but it was Dennis Segalis's dad as well.
Okay.
Dennis was a few years younger than I was, of course, but we got a couple of junior Speedway bikes, and they were like chainsaw motors back in those days. I mean, they were really crazy, hard to ride. There wasn't really any junior Speedway races going on at the time because the insurance was so high.
Yeah.
So we built our own track. It was in the back of Dennis Segalis's dad's big catering business.
Okay.
And we used to go there after school and on the weekends and just do laps. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of places that we could actually ride at because they, like I said, they wouldn't allow little juniors, and especially those crazy little McCullough motors. They were like chainsaw motors. They were nuts, but had a good time. Then, of course, at the age of 16 is when I started racing professionally.
Cool. Okay, next question I got. What riders did you look up to and idolize when you were young, and why? And did you ever get to race any of your heroes?
So let's talk about American Speedway because that's where it began for me. It would have been for sure Rick Woods. Another one of my huge mentors was the great Mike Bast, Steve Bast, Wild Bill Cody, Sonny Nutter. I mean, the list goes on. I really looked up to all those guys, and it was great to be able to race them at such a very young age. And then, of course, we did rub handlebars in the end. And, like I said, Mike Bast was one of my huge mentors and trainers. At that time, you got to keep in mind that, Scott Autry had already moved back to England. So I didn't really know Scott until I made the move back to Britain myself. So I knew of Scott, but I didn't know him because I didn't see him on a weekly basis or race against him because I was, of course, living in the States still. But that's from an American standpoint. As far as a British or European standpoint, as far as who I really liked, I don't think there's enough time to list all of the great racers. I mean, Ivan Major, Barry Briggs, of course, Ole Olsen. I'm talking Ovi Funden. I raced against him in where did we race together? It was on the Ivan Major troop. And he was truly a fantastic man. He was so mellow and easy going. I just really liked, Ovi a lot. But so, yeah, I mean, I really have a lot of respect for those guys. And of course, Scott Autry, because he was a mentor to us as well when we first came over to Britain, especially when we would race for the American team, World Cup and World Team. Scott was huge for us. He was so mild mannered and mellow and stuff. We learned a lot from Scott.
That's cool. Next one I got. Who were your toughest? Who were the toughest riders to compete with in the British League racing days, and why?
Lee, like I said, there were so many back in that day. Eric Gunderson was just starting out. Not really. He was truly an amazing rider, even when he was racing with us at Gradley. I mean, he was amazing and a great guy. I loved Eric. Hans Nielsen was awesome. Let me see. Okay, so we had Ivan, we had Bobby Schwartz, we had Dennis Agalis, that I truly looked up to and, was quite afraid to ride against. Mike Lee was probably my biggest guy that I kind of worried about the most, because it always felt like Michael Lee had eyes in the back of his head, and he made great starts. And if he didn't make great starts, he was truly great from the back. Peter Collins, one of my all-time great friends, Dougie Wire, Jimmy McMillan, the list goes on. I have a lot of respect for a lot of the British riders and European riders, Egon Mueller, it was a great time for me. One of the best parts of my growing up livelihood, that is.
Certainly a special era. Right, the next one I got for you. Was there a certain bike or engine that you rode over the years that was a favourite? And can you remember the years of that, and why was that?
Well, I started out with the Jawa 2 valve. And then when the Neil Street came out, which was a conversion on the Jawa 2 valve, I was the first one to have one of those back in the States, because I hadn't moved to Britain yet. It was fantastic on the small tracks. And then, of course, the Wesleys came out, the Westlakes and the Goddens, and so I rode the 4-valve Jawa when I first came to Britain. But the moment that I sat on a Westlake, on a Wesley, I never turned back. I stayed on the Westlake, and I was sponsored by the factory, and I had a great engine tuner, Eddie Bull. I had great mechanics. So to me, the favorite for me was always the Wesley. It really was. It was light, and they were torquey, and they still had good top end. And so I was really a Westlake fan from the day I rode one.
Okay, cool. What was your favourite tracks in the British League, and why? And also favourite tracks around the world?
My favourite tracks, obviously, in England was Cradley Heath, my home track.
Yeah.
My hometown supporters, I call them. I really liked Hull. A lot of riders didn't like Hull because it was fast and narrow. Mm-hmm. I really liked Exeter as well. I didn't ride a ton at Exeter because I think they were on a Monday and I was on a Saturday. I'd come in from England. So it was really mostly our team events. I would only really ride at Exeter maybe once or twice a year at the most, but I loved it. Yeah. Swindon was a good track for me. I enjoyed racing in Swindon. I loved Reading. I loved Wimbledon. I don't think there was really a track that I didn't like. I wasn't a big fan of Bristol.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And I don't know why, because I like the big tracks as much as the little tracks, and it was a big track. But I just didn't, it was only there a couple of years when I first moved over. But I just didn't get around there as well as I really wanted to.
Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, next question I've got. You had obviously a famous rivalry with Kenny Carter in what happened in the 82 World Final, etc. Was that just your rivalry sort of almost coming to a head in that big meeting, or did you have many run-ins with Kenny in the British League as well, building up to that World Final?
Well, I don't really like to talk about this so much because of what happened in the end with what he did is just kind of unforgettable and unforgivable. Yeah. but I don't think it came to a head there. We had plenty of run-ins prior to that, but I wasn't the only one that had plenty of run-ins with him. Yeah. A lot of his own English racers had a lot of run-ins with him. Mm-hmm. But I mean, obviously that was my last race that I raced in, and it was a world championship, and it was certainly controversial, you know. But like I tell everybody, did I leave him no room? I left him no room whatsoever. Did I hit him? No, I didn't hit him. And you can see by the Chips cameras, they had 27 cameras there that night. And if they go back and look at the Chips angle, which was coming out of turn 2, they would certainly have seen that.
Yeah.
So, but you know, the thing is the world championship, and we were banging handlebars the lap before that. He left the door open for me, and I snuck underneath it. And did I shut the door on him big time? Absolutely. But you have to remember that the LA Coliseum track had wide turns, but they narrowed so quickly coming out of the turns because the straightaways were so narrow. Yeah. So you had to be well aware of your exit coming out of, you know, turn 2 and turn 4. Otherwise you were going to scrape the fence anyway. So I'm not, you know, I don't like to speak about, unfortunately, I don't want to upset anybody, but you know, it's just, I think that what had happened was unforgivable, and I feel so bad for his wife, his kids, and his wife's family, and even Kenny's family, you know. So, I mean, that's kind of enough said about that, Lee. I'd like to kind of move on from there. Yeah. I apologize.
Yeah, I respect that, Bruce. No problem. Right, next question. What track did you not racing in the British League too much? And were there any other tracks around the world you didn't enjoy too much either?
I didn't spend hardly any time in Italy. Mm-hmm. My track, Cradley, was on a Saturday, so it was a lot of the open matches in Europe were on a Saturday. Mm-hmm. However, our grass tracks, our long tracks were on Sunday, which I did a lot of and loved it. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get to race in Italy. I didn't get to race much in Norway. Not that there was a lot of racing going on there. And as far as the tracks that I didn't get to race in England were, like I said, I didn't get to race at Exeter a lot. I didn't get to race at Bristol very much. And the other Saturday tracks, unless it was an open meeting, because obviously our track was on a Saturday night. But I can't really remember a lot of European tracks that I didn't like. I loved all of Sweden. Even though Voyens in Denmark, it seemed like it rained every time we raced. Even to this day, I think that's the case. Yeah, I was okay with it. Yeah. We grew up when we first started in Britain. You're going to race in the rain, and that's just the way it was. I remember one of our World Team Cups at Reading. It was pouring down, and it's just a muddy mess. Hey, we had to race. It's a little different nowadays, but you know, it is the same for everybody. The conditions. So you get in there and you work your ass off, and you do the best you can to make a good start, so you don't get filled in.
So was it literally just Bristol that you didn't like in the UK? Pretty much, was it?
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, I didn't get enough time to really feel it and get used to it. But Hull was tough, narrow, and rough. I loved Hull. I loved Hull. I had great meetings there. I didn't have too many nights where I dropped more than, say, 2 or 3 points. So it was a good away track for me as well.
Cool. Next one I got was, did you have any favorite leathers that you wore during your career that you liked?
You know, I wasn't, I had so many, you know, because remember at that time we were racing 150 nights out of the year. Yeah. So it's not like we could just wear one set, you know, and it was wet all the time. So our leathers would be wet the next day. So, I mean, I would go through, you know, in the beginning of the year, probably I'd have 7 sets made, and they would be pretty worn out by the end of the season. So I loved my 81 World Final leathers there. I didn't have many leathers that had yellow in them. Yeah. And I wasn't stuck on a certain style. I did really like the whole stars and red, white, and blue American sort of look, though. I did like that for sure.
Very nice. Did you have any superstitions or anything specific you had to do on race days or anything sort of things like that?
You know, it's funny you ask that because yes, and you know who kind of drilled that into my mind was Mike Bast.
Okay.
Back in those days, you know, you didn't eat peanuts in the pits. I was very superstitious about that.
Okay.
Which is a strange thing, and also the color green. And I think back in those days, the only guy that really wore green leathers was Simon Wigg.
Yeah.
Another guy that I truly loved as well was Simon Wigg and Billy Sanders, Phil Crump. I mean, the list goes on. I forgot about that. Sorry. So green and peanuts. Nowadays, I'm all about green. All of my company trucks are gray and green, you know, and Monster Energy was always green. So that kind of changed the way everybody thought.
Yeah, I see that nice helmet in the background with green on as well.
That's my son's Connor. That's his helmet back there.
Is it?
Yeah,
Nice.
that's his. That's when he was racing motocross and the Baja 500 and 1000. I lost Connor, unfortunately, from a drunk driver, 8 years ago. So those are his leathers back there as well, and that's his little junior Speedway bike. I don't know if you can see that a little bit. I'll turn it a little bit so you can see it even better.
Yeah, very nice.
There you go.
That's quite a special thing, man. Special thing. That's special for you to keep that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a tough thing for our family, my wife and myself. Daily we struggle with it. But we're hoping he's in good hands.
Yeah. Yep. Where did you race as a youngster, and did you travel much as a youngster? Can you sort of elaborate on that part before you obviously went pro?
Prior to moving to England, Lee?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, our tracks here, we were racing 5 nights a week as well at that time. When I first started, maybe not, so maybe probably 3 nights. Then we had an increase of tracks around Southern California. I was racing at Costa Mesa, San Bernardino, Ventura. I mean, these are all tracks that are basically about 2 to 2.5 hours away from my home track, which isn't very far.
Yeah.
So when I moved to Britain and had to, because I was living in the Midlands, it's close to Birmingham. When I used to get in the car and have to travel to Exeter, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going on the other side of the world, more or less.
Yeah.
So I had to get used to that. But I was traveling quite a bit just locally. It was tough because I was still going to school. Mm-hmm. And my parents always said, when they were alive, that is, if you start dropping your grades, your Speedway is going to stop. School is the most important thing here. So I did my best. Like I said, our racing was all during the midweek except for one Saturday track. And I'd get home at 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I'd maybe earlier than that, midnight sometimes, I would have to go to school. I'd be dragging ass, and I had to make sure my grades were good, and they weren't great. Let me tell you my grades, but I was able to do well and get through high school, and then just concentrated on Speedway.
Yeah, that's interesting. Next one I got for you. Did you have any injuries during your career that you felt held you back a little bit from achieving even more in the sport? And if so, what were they?
I'm feeling my injuries a lot more now that I'm 63 than I did back in those days. I think because my mind was always so set. Back in those days, we were able to cut, our plaster off when we had a broken wrist or a broken hand because we had to get back out there. Nowadays, you have to have a doctor's release. We didn't even worry about that back in those days. Yeah. When I broke some bones in California when I was racing, and then when I moved to Britain, I broke an ankle, shattered an ankle. It was tough. The problem with getting injured is that everybody continues to race, and you have to take a step backwards for 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the injury. And you lose all that time, and you're just always trying to gain momentum and stay up with the guys, the top guys. Losing seat time or track time is what really hurts the most. You don't think about the injuries too much. I mean, I remember dislocating my shoulder riding down in Mexico, and my shoulder would pop out of the socket. I remember in Italy, Ronnie Preston actually having to set my shoulder. I pulled off to the infield and my shoulder was out of the socket, and he came in. I told him, okay, pull it to the left, a little more to the right, and he reset it for me. Finished the night, but I remember those injuries quite a bit, but they hurt a lot more these days than they did back in those days.
Yeah.
Mind over matter back in those days. Now it's an age and I'm a big wuss, you know?
Yeah. Okay, next one I got. What riders were your favorite to team ride with and why?
I got to say for sure Bobby Schwartz. Okay, he and I were good buddies, still are. And I had, you know, like Alan Graham, you know, with Cradley. Alan was a great team rider with me. Eric Gunderson was fantastic. However, he was a heat leader, so we didn't get to ride much together. But from an American standpoint, I had, you know, Bobby Schwartz and John Cook and Dennis Agalis. But usually, you know, other than World Team Cup, you'd be by yourself with the other countries racing against you. You'd have one other. And Bobby Schwartz and I were always paired together. He'd always start on the inside, I always start on the outside. And there was no argument there. I liked riding the outside, and he was perfectly comfortable on the inside.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I remember him riding the inside well, and you rode the outside. That was a good combination. Okay. What British track or venue had the best changing rooms and why?
Best change? None of them. Back in those days, gosh, you know, I remember, you know, the thing is if you know, we had the second halves, right?
Yeah.
If you made the final, all the guys from the racing earlier in the night were always in the big tub. So the water would be freaking filthy in there, and you'd have to get in there and take a bath because they didn't have showers. Yeah. Most a couple tracks had showers. Cradley Heath didn't have great showers or great bathrooms. No. But remember, this was old school. This was, you know, 35 years ago. But I'll never forget Hull. And at that point, everybody kind of said they didn't want to make the final because they wanted to get in the shower early, so the water was still kind of clean.
Because my next question was, what was the worst changing room? So pretty much all of them then.
Yeah. In fact, I can't even tell you a great one at that time. But, you know, again, I'm getting kind of old and I forget a few things. But, you know, I like the fact that you could take showers because in America, there were no showers. You raced, you signed some autographs, you packed up and went home. You know, so so when I moved to England, it was great. I could at least kind of clean off and head back down the motorway to home, you know, so I kind of liked it.
What was it like at Wembley for that world final? Was that?
You know, I just, it's so hard to explain because, I mean, the atmosphere, and I remember going to Wembley when Ollie won it. Well, that was 78, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah. 78. Yeah. I was there. I actually went with Chris Pusey because he was racing in America, you know, with the troop. And he says, yeah, come on over. And he took me around. Chris Pusey was a great host. I was also introduced back in those days to Peter Collins and Dougie Wire when we did the Australia races in New Zealand. But I kind of hung out with Chris Pusey at that world final, and I was in total shock when I walked through the gates, and even walking into it. This is like an American football stadium, and you know, all the fans and the horns and the banners, and it was one of the most unbelievable times I've ever seen. And then to experience it with my world final there, I should say. Everybody's world final in 81. And I had those close races. That place was on fire. I mean, it was just amazing. And you know, a lot of people say it was one of the best world finals ever. I'm going to say it was, of course, but there's been a million other really great world finals. Was there a lot of other great heats? I was asked that by Nigel Pearson and Kelvin Tatum I did their podcast about 2-3 weeks ago. Yeah, and I have to agree, there wasn't a lot of other great heats. I remember Eric Gunnarsson breaking the track record. Yeah. Okay. That same night. Gosh, and he was fast too. He was really fast. So it was one of the most amazing nights. I mean, I've got to say, for me, it was my best night I ever had raced in. The 82 World Final was also, of course, very, very important to me because it had never been in the United States, and I'd won it the year before, and it was in my hometown or close to my hometown. So that was amazing. And then to win it, and then also to retire up on the podium, that was great for me. The controversy, yeah, I could have done without that, but maybe they talk about that race more because of the controversy than they do the actual racing, you know. But 81 World Final was huge to me, and so was the 82 World Final.
That answered my next one because it was the most memorable meeting, so that's pretty much them two.
Yeah, I have to say, in 81, when Schwartzy and I won the World Paris Championship in Poland, that was an amazing night.
That was pretty cool. But I think even the fact that it was obviously the last Wembley World Final as well made it even more iconic sort of thing. I was very young then. I think I was about 4 or 5, so I didn't really remember. But I've got the DVD. Even I've got the DVD, and it's like an amazing meeting. Like the races you were involved in as well. Wow.
Yeah, you're making me sound really old when you say you were 4 years old. That's great. Oh my gosh! You know, if you look at the replays, you know, literally, I beat Tommy Knudsen by maybe 2 inches.
Yeah.
At the most, and same with Ollie.
Ollie, yeah.
And then, like I said, to beat Ollie, because Ollie like had eyes in the back of his head as well. He was amazing back in those days, you know. But I had this attitude that, you know, I'm going to fight until we cross that finish line. I don't care if it's 1 foot in front of it. My heart was exploding that night. I just wanted to win so bad. I really wanted to win the year before in Gothenburg, you know, and I say this all the time that there's so many great racers. Dave Jessup, for one of them, I hate to always say Dave Jessup, but he's a guy in my mind that should have become world champion. And he didn't because he had a lot of problems on those one-off world championship nights. That's something to say about the GPs now. You can make a mistake and still come back 2 weeks later and make those points up. Yeah. But on a one-off world championship, you know, you can only maybe drop 1 point, you know, and that's, you can see that from years past. You just can't make mistakes. But I'm a big fan of the GPs. I think they're awesome. I think, you know, I was able to witness one back in Torun with the Monster Energy bunch, Joe Parsons, and I was amazed to see Poland. When I was there, remember, Poland was behind the Iron Curtain, and it was very, very dark, very gloomy, and we were all really afraid to race there. The fans were amazing, don't get me wrong, and they loved Speedway, but it was a different country, as was Czechoslovakia. They were different. I never raced in Russia, so I can't say that about Russia. But when I went and visited Torun, was it 6-7 years ago? I was absolutely amazed. I mean, when I was flying in, I couldn't believe there was actually high rises in Torun or in Poland. I just couldn't. And, you know, I must admit, the women were absolutely gorgeous. There were so many beautiful women, you know. But the people were friendly. They were so very hospitable, and I had a great time, and I just loved seeing that GP in Torun that night. I just loved it. I love the whole GP system. It's great.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, next one I got. Who were your closest friends during your Speedway career? And was it easy to block out the friendship once the tape goes up?
Well, my best buddies were, you know, the guys that, well, from an American standpoint, because we, you know, grew up racing, Bobby Schwartz, Dennis Segalis for sure. Dennis is still my best buddy now to this day. We see a lot of each other. We hang out a lot together. Scott Autry and I didn't hang out together, but he was, a good mate to watch race. And then Peter Collins. I should say Phil Collins, when he was at Cradley with us, Phil's a great guy too, and he still is. I talk to him quite a bit. Dougie Wire was great back in those days. Like I said, Jimmy Mack. Ollie, Eric Gunderson, I can never forget about him because we were on the same team. We spent a lot of time not only on the track but off the track together, and he was so dedicated. He really was. I wasn't real close with Hans Nielsen. Hans was a little bit quieter, but he was. So to get back to rivalries, I remember racing against Bobby Schwartz at Birmingham. I was guesting for Kings Lynn, and Bobby stuck me through the fence. And I didn't know this until like 4 months later, but I had to go to the hospital. I continued to race, but I had to go to the hospital. I had broken my neck. I shouldn't say broken it. I fractured it. I didn't know that until I went and saw an orthopedic surgeon months later. So, even though you're the best of friends, when you get on the racetrack, it's all business. Same with Dennis and I, Segalis and I. Same with, Ollie Olsen was all business all the time, as was Ivan Major. They all were.
Yeah.
Peter Collins was an amazing guy to race against. Peter wasn't the best of starters, but he was brilliant from the back. And so if I'd make a start on PC, and like I said, Michael Lee, I was always concerned that, man, I need to cover my tracks here and I need to go because they will pass me, because they were that good. Yeah. So I had a ton of them. Spent a lot of time with American boys, and we were a great U.S. team together. We loved flying the stars and stripes on our chest, and it meant a lot to us to win. We won a lot of races back in those days, and we set the mark for a lot of the other American boys that came in after us, just like what Scott Autry did for us, and Steve Gresham.
It did seem to be special between you American guys, the camaraderie and everything it seemed to be just a bit different than everyone else's.
Everybody says that, and I have to agree with you because, I witnessed it, firsthand. And, even though the British boys were all together and great, I think the American boys back in America spent time not only on the racetrack together, but away from the racetrack because, we saw each other so much. Mm. We partied together a little bit.
Yeah.
We sometimes liked the same girls as each other.
Yeah.
I won't say anymore, but,
Yeah.
It's a good time of our lives for sure.
Yeah. Pretty special. Okay, next one I got. How important was it to have a mechanic you trust and know wow? And what mechanics did you gel with best and why?
I've always told up and coming riders, you're only as good as who you surround yourself with. If my bikes are breaking, I'm having a tough time, I'm not going to win races. I have to rely on them 125%.
Yeah.
And I had quite a few mechanics in America when I first started because I didn't really know any better and didn't really know if it was going to be a profession of mine. Yeah, I loved it in the beginning, but they were just coming out there to have fun. And then my dad, when he was still alive, hired an Anaheim police officer by the name of John McGoldrick. Boy, did he keep me in line. I couldn't have fun. I wasn't going to go partying afterwards. My dad said, you keep him in line no matter what. So Johnny Mack was a great American mechanic of mine. I love the guy dearly, and I stayed at their house a lot, and they were only literally an hour away from me. Traveled everywhere together. And then when I moved I even had, my brother-in-law, Mark Cherry. He was a speedway racer in America who was married to my sister, still is, an amazing guy. an amazing guy. Mark's an amazing guy. He actually came over with me when I first moved to England, and my sister was only married to Mark, I think, for 2 months. And so he came over with me for 2 weeks to get me settled in. Dan McCormick, my promoter at the time, turned me on to Eddie Bull, who was my motor guy and my mechanic. It was just he and I in the beginning. And then it became a lot of work for Eddie, and he was still working as a mechanic at the time. So I had a really great German mechanic, Jürgen Goldstein, who's no longer with us, the late Jürgen Goldstein. He took care of most all of my long track, grass track stuff. Great guy. Actually, Peter Collins is the one that introduced me to Jürgen. And then I had Mikey Tzonagas, who we call Mikey T. He was Gene Wood's mechanic back in America when I was racing, and he was very involved with the Indy cars, as his brother and family were and still are. And so I brought Mikey over, and Mikey's my true buddy. He still is. We had a lot of good fun. My bikes were always immaculate. He's a great human being. So I had a lot of other ones in America, Jeff and Zan. I mean, the list goes on. Brian Alderdice, but they were just kind of part-time, came in and out and stuff. But really, it was John McGoldrick, it was Jürgen Goldstein, Steady Eddie Bull, and of course Mikey Tzonagas. They were my heartbeat, man, and I could rely and trust on them 105 million%.
Yeah, a lot of special relationships made then.
Yeah.
Right, next one. Do you have any regrets from your Speedway career at all?
I have to say, I think that I let quite a few people down when I retired on the podium. I did have some commitments left, like Cradley Heath. I didn't finish out the year, and quite a few other races that I was going to do. And the biggest reason I had to quit was because of MGM, which was the chip show. They made me stop. They could not bring me on as a regular on the show if I was to continue racing. And it wasn't my all-time dream to live and die racing Speedway. Yeah. I had this in my heart that I wanted to become world champion. And then I had this other opportunity, which I got to tell you, I'm not an actor. I was a racer, but they threw me in the deep end, and I tried to swim as the best I could. And I got to do a lot of work in the industry. Yeah. And then when I had kids, it was pretty obvious that I didn't want to travel with that anymore, that I needed to stay home and get a real job. But they would not let me play my character on the show if I was to continue. And then it was also another dream for me, which was to retire as a world champion, which I don't think anybody ever has done. Or if they have, they've come back and probably played with it a little bit more. And I can truly say I didn't do that. Came back, did a couple little demonstration rides and match races. I did that and had a lot of fun. But so that would be probably my only regret, was that I let some people down. Would I do it again? Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably.
Okay, fair enough. Next one I got. Can you tell us a funny story from your racing day memories?
Oh, well, one that always sticks out in my mind is, we sometimes we'd have a Sunday off, and our track at Cradley was on a Saturday. And I remember Eric Gunderson came to my house after the race, and we had a couple beers, and I had this really large melon fruit in my house. And Eric had a couple beers, probably a few too many, as we all did. I'll never forget him grabbing that melon, and it wasn't cut, and him taking like 5 ginormous bites out of this thing. I mean, and Helly was there, his wife, and we were laughing. So I know it's not that funny of a story, but if you were there and saw it, you would die laughing. The other one that probably I never let Mikey live down. Mikey was my mechanic, Mikey T.
Yeah.
I'd fly in on a Monday, excuse me, from Germany, and most of the time I'd get to fly into Birmingham, and Mikey would meet me and pick me up at the airport. And I can't tell you how many times he was late picking me up. And it wasn't late because he had worked the night before, because he had that night off. Because I was in in Europe somewhere. Yeah. And so to this day, I give him a hard time that, okay, if you're coming over, make sure you're there at 5, not 6. I'd sit on the curbside waiting for Mikey to come and show up because he was always late, And it's like I'd been racing, 18 nights straight, and I was burnt out, and I had a night off, and I just want to get home, and he'd be showing up late. Drive me nuts.
Nightmare. Right, the next one I had you covered. That was about saying about your chips thing after, so that's cool. The next one I got. What would you consider your biggest strengths as a speedway rider, and did you feel that you had any weaknesses you had?
Weaknesses. With my with the progress that I had, I should say, I don't really think that I had any weaknesses. I wasn't a brilliant starter. I would say I wasn't a very consistent starter. Yeah. Which taught me how to come from the back and pass. So I would say probably not a consistent starter. My bikes were always great. Probably my assets were, I think that I was taught well by Mike Bass, by Scott Autry, that I was a good captain, not only to the U.S. team, but also to Cradle Heath, my teammates at Cradle Heath. I was always willing to let riders that broke use my spare bikes on the night. And I think the main thing is I just had this heart and want and will to win, that if it was going to be a tough night and I was going to have to be aggressive, I would have to be aggressive. And I think everybody kind of knew that. If you let them, pick on you and shove on you a little bit, everybody would know that. Happen everywhere you go. But if you were the opposite, and if they knew that, you're going to be tough on them, they knew that, they better be careful. I'm not saying that I'm just saying that a lot of racers were that same way. Yeah. So was I dirty? Hell no, I wasn't dirty. But, I was gonna run you in hard, but I wasn't gonna take you out, just because that's the way it was, it's either him or me. So, and that's because you always had to have this will to win. That's the biggest thing. If you want to win, you need to be tough.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree with that. Next one. If you could re-race a particular meeting or race tomorrow in your full prime, where would it be and why?
It would be the Intercontinental final at White City when we had all the Yanks. We had 3 Yanks in the race. Me, Siggy. Yeah. Excuse me. All 4 of us.
Yeah.
Sean. Yeah. Kelly, Siggy, and myself. And, I knew that I had a great night going, so I knew that my Americans didn't have a great night at that point. Yeah. I think Sean or maybe Kelly had a little better night, but so the deal was let the other Yanks get up there, because even though if I dropped points and I wouldn't win the night, I was still going to help the Americans. Yeah. And we wanted more people to try to get in to the Intercontinental final, to try to get to the final to go to the United States to race.
Yeah.
Also, that would release more pressure on me if there's more Americans at the Coliseum. But the problem I have, and it was my fault and my stupidity, was doing wheelies in the back.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if I just kind of putt around. If it looked like I broke a chain, I wasn't going to come out looking good anyway. But to do wheelies, I mean, that was absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, should I have broken the tapes? It's all, you know, it's all hindsight now. And I could truly say that I was an idiot that night for doing wheelies in the back.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I did have a question for that in a second, saying about, because I remember seeing the footage of it. You know, the crowd were booing, and you were going around on the truck. And do you feel that you were a bit hard done by there? Because to be fair, it did and does go on a lot, doesn't it, with people helping out guys and teammates or fellow countrymen and all sorts of things like that.
Do you say, do I think it was fair what I did?
As in, like, do you feel hard done by where the crowd, obviously, I see the footage they got.
Well, you know, the other problem, why they're also upset, including the Cradley fans, because it affected Alan Graham that night for doing what I did.
Oh, okay.
You know, and Alan Graham was a huge racer at Cradley. So, and, you know, I get the way they felt. You're out there to go win races. I don't care who's in them, and I agree. Yeah. But I made the decision with the team manager and the other Yanks that you guys go on, you guys need the points. I'm okay where I'm at. Yeah. I made that decision. Nobody else did.
Yeah.
Because I could have done the complete opposite and went out there and won and didn't think about my American mates, but I did.
Yeah. I guess, like you said, the wheelie thing, probably they thought that was almost like taking the mick a little bit, or.
And I agree. Wholeheartedly, I agree. It was just not the right thing to do. It was stupid. And here I was upset because they were upset at me. I'm the one that did it, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I'm the one that egged this on. You know, it was wrong. So to answer your question, absolutely. That's the race I'd like to take back.
Yeah, fair enough. Respect that. What do you personally feel were your best achievements in Speedway?
I think obviously winning the World Championships, the team, the pairs, and 2 individuals. And I think that, I mean, I can't answer this, but I think that my teammates can, as far as the Americans and my Cradley Heath teammates. I did everything I could to help them and to try to educate them, you know, and hey, you know, gate 3 is good. You know, you're going to come out of there with a little more throttle. I mean, if I had to loan a bike to guys, I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many times I had to loan my spare bike to Kelly Moran, because 9 out of 10 times his equipment was not very good.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, towards the end of my career, I had a bike built especially for the World Team Cup, and Kelly's one that had to ride it all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, that motorcycle Bobby Schwartz has right to this day. He kept that bike.
Did he?
Wish I had it, but yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Oh, nice. Okay, next one I got. Were there many riders that you didn't get on with racing? You always seem to have run-ins with them. Was there many guys in the British League that you sort of didn't really like racing with much?
Everybody knows, you know, Kenny Carter.
Yeah.
Did I have tussles? Yeah, but I can't remember that they ever lasted very long. You know, yeah, we're going to be a little upset that night, but, you know, we all knew what we were after, and I never went out and fenced anybody, you know. The time that Kenny and I got together at White City, we locked my foot peg onto him, and it took us both to the fence. I didn't literally take him and keep pushing him out. We locked my foot peg, and that's because he came down on me from the start, you know. So I don't really, I mean, other riders can answer that better than I can. I don't feel as if I had many enemies, you know, as far as guys that truly didn't like me, other than Kenny.
Yeah. Okay, we covered that. Who would you say were the 3 best riders that you ever competed against in your career, if you had to pick 3?
Well, I've said this all along. I'm going to say Michael Lee. Michael Lee was a tough one for me.
Yeah.
Peter Collins and Ole Olsen. I mean, I could even say Ivan, but at that, I mean, when I first got there, yeah, are you kidding? He was brilliant. But towards the middle. I mean, I was only in Britain for 5 years. I wasn't there very long, but the middle, say my career in England, Ivan was starting to step back a little bit.
Yeah.
He was still great, but I wasn't. I mean, he was a great starter. Don't get me wrong. He made brilliant starts. Ivan wasn't the kind of guy that loved to go out in the dirt, and go around the outside.
Yeah.
Really, nor was Ole, because those guys made such great starts and they could protect themselves going down every straightaway and every turn. Like I said, those guys had eyes in the back of their head. And Eric Gunderson was fairly new at the time. And Hans was tough as well. Tommy Knudsen was tough as well. I mean, the list goes on because they were so good. But and it was actually after I left. I mean, you look at the success of Eric and Hans, Tommy Knudsen. Those guys, I mean, were brilliant. They really were. And PC with winning a world championship, Michael Lee with winning a world championship. How many? All he had 4, didn't he? I mean, Dave Jessup was tough. The list goes on. It really does, and I'm so grateful and thankful that I was able to win some and also lose quite a bit.
Yeah, it was a special era for sure. If you could give any advice to a youngster out there who wants to be a pro speedway rider, what would it be?
Well, I've got to be truthful with you. I'm concerned about the way the sport is, but it's not just speedway. It's every motorsport.
Yeah.
During our time now, I mean, there's so many things for the parents to train their kids to do that has an expected longer longevity of life in it.
Yeah.
Let's say soccer, football. Let's say American football, baseball. So I think the parents are certainly thinking of their kids, and saying, I'm going to spend a lot of money doing this, and your length of profession in this sport could only be 4 years, and the injury risk is so high. That's the scary part. So that's the honest part of me. Do I want to see it come back? Heck yeah. I just, the way I'm so bummed about the way, for us Americans, the only way to become world champion was to race in Britain.
Yeah.
That was the mecca for the sport. And that's changed, and that's a bummer for me to see, because I had so much time there, and some of the tracks I went to, I mean, these fans were incredible. They just loved this sport. So I think the money has gotten out of hand. In the future, they're a little concerned about, so you don't see a lot of the young kids. I mean, we don't see a lot of them in America. I love this kid, Luke Becker, Brock Nickel. These kids are great. After this COVID crap, is done, I hope that they go out there and kick some butt. But I'm just concerned with the entire motorsports industry at this point. And even with my kids, when they were racing motorcycles, they were getting through school and they had to ride 5 and 6 days a week practice, and their livelihood and profession is short-lived. And for the most part, 9 out of 10 aren't going to make it.
Yeah.
Okay. And if they make it, how much money are they going to make? Plus the whole risk factor. That's the problem. But I love Speedway to this day. I do. I get to watch the GPs, and Greg Hancock has truly been an American legend for American Speedway. I love that. I call him a kid because he was a kid when I knew him, and now he's one of the older guys. But he has done so much for American Speedway, and he is a perfectly great guy. And I truly mean that. It's so it's a shame. I hate to see what's happening right now, but it's not just with Speedway. It's pretty much every motorsport.
My next question was: is there any other sports you enjoy watching?
I like Indy cars. I'm an F1 fan. I've always been a huge baseball fan, and people go, "Why do you watch that? It's so boring to watch on TV." I said, "I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I love baseball. I played baseball as a young kid, so I'm a big baseball fan as well." I enjoy soccer or football, but I don't watch a lot of it. I'm so busy with our business now that when I get home and my age, I have to have a little bit of quiet time.
Chill out, yeah. Okay, cool. I've got about 3 or 4 more left. You won a lot individually, obviously, and as a team rider too. Did you prefer to be part of a team, or did you actually like ideally down to yourself individually, or did you like both? Or
I loved being a part of teams, meaning American team and Cradley.
Yeah,
I loved it, because it's like, for world team stuff, we're racing for the United States of America, and these are all my buddies. We're in a foreign country. Let's go out there and kick some ass, guys. That was it, and we were doing really well, and it's such a great feeling. Okay. The reason I was there, was individually, because I wanted to become an individual world champion. But when you're introduced to team racing and even Cradley Heath, I wanted to go out and beat the Swindon Robins. I wanted to go out and beat the Brummies. That was our deal. There's so much competition in me that we're out there to win. People say, "Oh yeah, go have a good time." Okay, we're gonna have a good time, but it's about winning. That's what it was for us. It really was. And you know what? We're gonna have a good time afterwards. But right now we're here to do our job, and that's to come out ahead. A lot of times we didn't, but our job was to go out there and win races.
Seemed to be a very special time with you guys at Cradley Heath around that time, and a lot of special riders come out of there. Yourself, Eric Gunderson, like you said, Alan Graham was there, Jano Pedersen. It just seems, and the fans were obviously special there, passionate.
Oh, well, I mean, I remember when I was talking to Dougie Wire and PC, they were helping me sign, and I had calls from Kings Lynn that were very interested. Martin Rogers was, and believe it or not, Halifax was. Okay, can you imagine if I went to Halifax and I was there? Maybe it would have been different. I don't know.
Maybe
so they were helping me with negotiations because I didn't have a manager at that time, and the one thing I'll never forget what they said to me goes, "Oh, Cradley Heath, if you pick on any of those riders, more than likely you're going to have to get escorted out of there, because in the past they used to see some of the Cradley Heath fans nearly turn cars over of riders that were picking on their riders."
Yeah, I've heard of these stories.
And I saw that and I witnessed that.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you what, they were the most amazing supporters that I ever came across. They were strong and they didn't take any crap from anybody, and it was our way or the highway. And I love that.
Personally, I'd have loved to have seen you in a Swindon Robins race jacket, but I think you'd have looked good with that, with the red.
I think I guested possibly for Swindon maybe once or twice, but most of the tracks were on Saturday night, so I didn't do a lot of guesting.
I think you did a Bob Kilby testimonial.
Oh, sure.
I think you wore one then, and I've seen a picture. Yeah, that looked pretty cool.
Bob Kilby was one of those guys that, he was so quiet, but he was a tough ass.
Yeah.
Serious. That's one guy you just kind of knew, because he always had that smile, and he was very quiet and a very nice guy.
Yeah.
Very nice guy. I liked him and got along great with him. But he was one of those guys I would have to say that, you better be kind to on the track.
Yeah.
Because he could get you back.
Yeah, for sure. Right, I've only got a few left. You won, obviously, your 2 world individual Speedway titles. Was there one more special than the other?
Well, the 81 individual, because it was my first one, other than the pairs, okay? Other than the pairs was great. But like I said, going there, I wanted to become individual champion.
Yeah.
So I could, at the end of the day, I could say I did this all on my own and I didn't have a partner other than, of course, my mechanics and the people that I surrounded myself with, because there's no way I could win any of those championships if it wasn't for mechanics, friends, and family that you surround yourself with. I'm serious. I tell everybody that all the time. So the 81 World Final will always be the top of my list, and then, of course, the 82 World Final in my hometown.
Okay, cool. I've got a couple left. Would you have enjoyed the Speedway GP era there is now, and do you think that would have suited you more, and even one more?
I absolutely would have loved it because the way I look at it is that what is the GP series? Is there like 10 or 11 of them?
Yeah, 10 in it, I think.
Okay, and possibly increasing if there's more tracks.
Yeah.
That certainly shows the fans and everybody else a true world champion because he's done that over 10 races.
Yeah, consistent as well,
yeah. Can you drop a few points here and there, which I told you earlier? Yeah, you can, but you still have to be consistent.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't lose a lot of races. That's why I look at guys like Greg Hancock, and all that. I mean, the list goes on. Yeah, absolutely. I have so much respect for. The guy that I didn't know was Tony Rickardson.
I was just about to mention him when you said that, actually. Yeah.
And I look at him. I mean, he won 4 world championships. I mean, and I feel as if the guy doesn't get enough credit. I really don't, because I think he was brilliant to win 4 world championships. And I most interviews I always saw, he was a great, kind, nice guy. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there. But again, if it was, I think it absolutely shows a true world champion, because there has been guys on a one-off world championship night that have won that probably shouldn't have. I can't, and I don't know those names. I've heard them in the past, years ago. But for the most part, even on a one-off individual world championship, those guys are true world champions. Yeah. Ole Olsen, Ivan, Ovi, Brigo, list goes on and on and on.
Technically, the best did win, even with the one-off one.
Yeah.
Right, and last one I got. What are you actually doing with yourself these days?
Well, my dad was into the concrete cutting business. What we do is we cut concrete on the freeways, public works, and buildings. We also core holes in them. That's what my dad did years ago. And I was always taught years ago, even as a kid, I worked in the shop. I cleaned toilets in the office years and years ago. And I think it's always been in my blood. And when I got out of TV, I went back into the industry. And my father's company, which we sold, I lost my mom and dad in an airplane crash back in 1975. And we sold to the vice president, which was in the will to do that. Yeah. And I went back and worked for them for a while. And then my cousin had a concrete, so I went to work for him. I jumped around a little bit. And then after my son was killed, my wife and I said, let's just start our own company. So we started our own concrete cutting company 8 years ago. We have 25 employees. We've grown immensely over the last few years. And we also named the company after my son. It's Connor, Concrete Cutting and Coring. So we're doing really well. I'm getting kind of old. I'm trying to pass the reins down to Ryan, my son, my other boy. Yeah. But all my kids are doing great. My wife's doing great. Life is good. We certainly miss Connor, that's for sure.
So I'm sure your dad would have been proud of you doing this as well.
I don't know. They're still out in the industry. They're our competitors now. But I think so.
Is there any other shout outs you want to make before we go?
No, I just, I'd like to thank all the Cradley fans out there that were tremendous to me of the past, and all my good mates, and you know, these Skypes and stuff that we're doing are a little bit different for me, you know, but you know, I as always, I try to be straight up and tell the truth, and you know, I appreciate what everybody's done for me in the past.
It's been an absolute privilege to get to meet you and speak to you, Bruce. Unbelievable.
Same here, Lee.
I really appreciate your time. Unbelievable. Much appreciated.
Yeah, and just give your mom another big kiss from me, okay?
Yeah, she's going to be over the moon when she sees that. I really appreciate it, Bruce. Thanks ever so much.
Anytime. Good talking to you, and thanks for all your listeners. We appreciate that.
Top man. Thanks, Bruce. Take it easy.
Have a good weekend.
And you. Thanks, Bruce.
Anytime. Thanks.
Thank you.